You're listening to the Be Better Off Show by Kelly Partners.
Welcome to the Be Better Off Show, where we bring amazing, interesting, insightful and inspirational people from all around Australia and the world to you, our clients, friends and business owners, to inspire you, because we know the people you hang around make a difference. So this morning we've got James Symond, who with his uncle founded Aussie Home Loans and built it into a fine business, and now is enjoying semi-retirement while he winds up for the next gig here in Sydney. Welcome, James.
Hi, Brett. How are you, pal?
Mate, I'm great. I'm in Sydney, sun's shining on a Friday morning.
Yep, sun shining, rare event.
Rare event. I know it's been raining a lot, so I'm looking out at the blue sky and I'm thinking this is pretty good. Mate, I wanted to ask you today now, and you know, you've built a tremendous business. You've learned a huge amount, and I'll ask you some sort of punchy, direct questions.
Yeah.
The three big things, you know, for people out there right now in their businesses, the three big things that made the most difference to you guys building Aussie Home Loans. What do you reckon they are?
We had a magnificent 30-year journey, 3 decades nearly, and I was very fortunate to be 19 years of age and have my uncle pull me aside, and together we opened the doors of a business that was built during a very difficult time, or started during a very difficult time. He had lost everything. He didn't go bankrupt, but he had lost everything. He had to start again at the age of 45, 48 years of age, and he had done very well. So really tough to start again, marriage breakup, but he had the tenacity and the vision to do that. And John, you know, we saw a gap in the marketplace. Interest rates were very high. No one was doing what we started to do on a retail basis, and it went from there. And we built a business, that was full of magnificent people. You know, people ask what our secret was within the business, and we talk about everything from brand to technology to systems and processes. People were, you know, the major piece. We hired and recruited the very, very best we could, recruited them and retained them. So it was a real important part of the process for us. Over 30 years, you need to have tenacity just to keep going. You know, our first 6 or 7 years, we didn't make a buck. We bled. I mean, annuity business, right? So it's all about building this book. For the first 6 or 7 years, we bled. So you need to have capital. You need to have the right investors. You need to have the right support behind you to make sure that you get there. And my uncle was very smart at that time, zigging and zagging and making sure that we had the right capital, that we had the right support and lenders in which to move forward with. And so we had a belief that was unwavering. We had a work ethic that was second to none. And we knew that we were on the right track in a marketplace that needed someone like Aussie Home Loans at the time. So it was a real exciting journey for me that ended about 12 months ago. And I've been on gardening leave until recent times. And after nearly 30 years, 1 million customers, a $70 billion loan book, and a business that, you know, worth nearly $1 billion. So, you know, we did okay.
So did you start in 1991?
92, Jen. So we opened the doors officially in February 92. Unofficially, we opened the doors, and we were there about a month before that, sorting out simple things. I mean, we had no money, Brett. I mean, we literally, I remember John gave me some money to go down the road, and we bought some stationery from an auction house. And literally for like $20 or $30, we bought 2 or 3 boxes, big boxes of just mixed secondhand stationery. And then they gave us all these little boxes with them. And so for the next 2 days, I sat on the floor with a colleague and sorting out the paper clips to the rubber bands to the whatever, and putting them in the little boxes, putting them on the shelf, and making sure that the staff didn't think we couldn't even afford new stationery. You know, we're proud people. So, you know, it was a big thing for us. So we literally started from the ground.
92, height of the recession, or back into the 90s recession. It sort of got into the property sector at that point. Interest rates were very high. And John saw that opportunity to say to people, well, hang on, you don't need to pay 18%. Maybe the banks are touching up a little bit. Did a great job with his brand. Never forget his first, "We'll Save You" type campaign. How important was that campaign to getting the word out and that sort of insurgent challenger position?
You know, we, John and John's face and John's voice and John standing on the fruit box, screaming out, it gave us cut through. No financial institution had put a face to the business. It was different. John was very good at it, whether he liked it or not. John also had a very friendly face.
Yeah.
John was also, he's a very smart guy. So he spoke very well, had a very friendly face, and it gave us an edge in helping us to build that brand Aussie with his catchphrase that John came up with, "We'll save you," which has lasted literally till today off and on. Really important. I mean, we tried to do things that were different. We tried to make sure that we were on the consumer's side at all times till today. And it worked, thankfully.
It's interesting. So, I met John, I interviewed him in Parramatta in the Octagon Centre in 1997.
Yeah.
And so he was out there, he was doing his ads, but he was still building his book, right? And while he was a professional, because I think he's a lawyer by training, so he wasn't just, a trained professional. He was professional, his mindset and the way he went about things.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also prepared to be different. And that's an interesting combination in that, most people get into a box and they find it very difficult to do anything outside of that box that they and others put themselves in. As you're going through this journey, you're watching him and you're helping him and the business sort of stay at the cutting edge, challenge. Where does this sort of internal fortitude come from to push ahead with your own path when the whole industry literally firstly is attacking you, then competing with you, pushing against you and really going in a different direction? Where does that strength of character come from?
Look, we had so much against us. We had so many headwinds. And the big four banks, once they started to wake up after a few years that we were getting traction, they were not happy. Losing market share to little old Aussie was not fun. I mean, we had literally one of the major banks had a branch. I think it was out in Campbelltown way, or that way, where literally on the front of the branch, they had derogatory comments professionally written in front of the branch on the glass about Aussie. We had got to them that much. We were eating market share. We were, killing it. Until several years down the track, Commonwealth Bank decided to stand up and literally lowered their rates by, was it 1% or 1.5% in one hit?
Yeah.
John and I looked at each other and went, oof, the big bear woke. We poked them that much that the big bear woke, and all the other banks followed. So for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 years, 7 years, whatever it was, we had a great advantage in terms of rate. And the rate was literally 1% or 2% less than the competition, the banking competition. But then the big banks decided to wake up and everyone fell into line and literally lowered their rates to match. So no longer did we have a significant rate advantage. We still had a rate advantage, but not of such significance. And we had to focus on the other areas of the business, absolutely stunning service, process, systems, a brand that people that loved, that were comfortable with, not just purely on price.
Very interesting.
You've got to be very careful when you just go out on price, because your competitors, if they're any good, can ultimately match it. And there goes your business model.
Yeah, so very interesting. It was obvious to me that along with that price and the brand, the friendly face of the brand, and the fact that it was on the consumer side, it was backed up with service. Now, I know that Aussie pioneered mobile lenders, guys in cars that would come to your house and give you face-to-face, one-to-one service. That was completely, revolutionary in the 90s, where, basically the mindset had been, if you want a loan from a bank, you put your best Sunday suit on, go and beg cap in hand to the bank manager at whenever he or her told you was the appropriate time and place. So that was a real flipping of the service proposition. And I think that um, ethos of being on the customer side built into the brand and strongly supported the business, even then when the banks were chasing you with lower rates and trying to then compete on price. I don't think they were ever able to get anywhere near the service that Aussie offered.
Brett, I mean, we tried harder, and Aussie still tries harder. Our brokers, had more heart. At 10 p.m. at night, they were sitting in a customer's home trying to do the right thing. At 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, they were sitting on a bus stop, if that was the local office for them, signing up a customer trying to do the right thing. These people were, and still are, very smart, very capable, and are willing to go the extra mile. And consumers had never seen service like it at the time. And so that served us well for many, many years of having a business model with an army of mobile brokers that used to go to consumers' homes. Interestingly enough, ultimately, consumers did like that service, but we were missing out on a whole bunch of other consumers who actually didn't want someone coming to their home.
Yeah.
So in the early 2000s, I decided to open up our first retail store, strip front retail store, which really went against the ethos of what, our distribution model was about at the time. I was the head of distribution. This was before I became CEO, and I liked retail stores. I thought they were, there was certainly a place for them within the business and within the sector. And
at that time, James, the banks like mid-90s and beyond had closed thousands of branches. And so again, it was a sort of zig when they zag type of move.
Spot on. So as they were closing branches, I was opening stores. I never called them branches because branches mean bank, fat, lazy. Sorry, banks. And I opened them as Aussie stores, like an Apple store. They looked right, they sounded right, they smelt right, and I franchised them, which was very important. I pulled aside absolutely the best there was in the industry to open up a franchise store, and I started with one. We then went to 24 stores, and that was a challenge over a couple of years. And then the opportunity to purchase one of our key competitors, Wizard, came on the table. We purchased Wizard, which was great and purely integrated the whole business within Aussie and brought across another 99 stores at the time. Today, there's 230 standalone Aussie retail stores, and they are an absolute powerhouse for us, in conjunction still with that mobile channel where there's many hundreds of soldiers on the ground to serve the consumers.
Yeah, very interesting. So as the industry, first low rates versus high rates, then the bank chases you for rates. You've gone mobile lenders, that's service led. Then they've closed all their branches. You've opened up stores. And so classic, I always saw John and yourself as challenging, as being prepared to take risks, which again is not something that is thought of when you think of banks in terms of take some business risk, in terms of get out in front of the curve and do the things that customers want. But always that listening to the customer, where, how was it that voice of the customer was so obvious and so clear to you?
So literally that whole concept of voice of customer and voice of broker and any groups of people that we were absolutely reliant upon, we had formal ways of feedback on biannual, literally bringing a truckload of potential customers and existing customers in a room, and listen to what they have to say. Same with brokers. And also too, I pride myself, and John prides himself certainly, on having a great nose for what, mum and dads want. And, our backgrounds are such that there was no silver spoon when we grew up, let me tell you. And, from our point of view, we learnt, and we just literally try to put ourselves in the customer's shoes and built a business in that way. We zigged, we zagged plenty of times. Sometimes we got it wrong, and we became so good at things because we probably got more things wrong than right at the time. And so we made more mistakes than most. And but we never made them twice. We learnt the business that Aussie is today is totally different than what we started with. We started with a non-bank lender. We started having one funder. We started with a mobile channel. Today, the business is a multi-channel. The business has amazing technology. The business has an awesome brand. The business is a multi-lender business, which is a mortgage broking business. We still have a house brand, or Aussie still has their house brand, and that does very, very well and is a very trusted brand. But having a lending panel of in excess of 20 banks or lenders gives the consumers choice. And one of the key reasons why we turned into a mortgage broker in the early 2000s, rather than saying as a non-bank lender, is that we also got so bloody good at distribution. So, you had a zillion customers nationally, and you really had one product or one lender, and it wasn't good enough anymore. The market had changed nevertheless, and that one product could never be the absolute cutting, be all and end all product for everyone. And in the early 2000s, we had decided to branch out and go from being a non-bank lender to a retail mortgage broker.
Yeah, which at the time, I think there was really just you guys. I remember when you started doing it, it was like, right, we've got everything.
Yeah, look,
they're more like a sneaker shop where you could buy every type of sneaker, not just
right.
one type of sneaker.
Look, there were quality mortgage brokers already in existence. There were wholesale aggregators, and there were also still quality smaller mortgage brokers that were retail mortgage brokers. But no one like Aussie, with the Aussie brand, the Aussie might, and the Aussie appetite. The first year of being a mortgage broker, we spent $25 million. This was 20 years ago nearly, in advertising. So no one had done that on a retail basis. No one had gone so hard. And we were instrumental. I know we're instrumental in solidifying what a mortgage broker meant to a consumer. Because consumers were still, what is a mortgage broker? And then lots of mortgage brokers at that time basically pointed to Aussie, we're a mortgage broker just like Aussie, lots of competitors. So we are proud to say we were arguably instrumental in
inventing and that category
to consumers of what a mortgage broker meant in Australia. And we just took off from there and just kept going and still are keeping on going.
Yeah. So you go, like at that time, to make the level of investment that you did in advertising, was it just take the profits and push them straight back into advertising and keep building the brand?
So John was very good of what is best for business first. What is best for business first? All the way through, right till 12, 18, 24 months ago, when we signed the last check and handed the business over. Whatever is best for business. So when I used to go, or the team used to go and say, John, we want to spend 15, 20, 25 million in advertising with an appropriate plan, he never, ever blinked. It was all about making sure we built this fine household brand, because it was all about trust. People didn't know what a mortgage broker was. So we did some, really cool things, whether it was having Aussie cars around, whether it was sponsoring high-level sports teams. We sponsored the Sydney Stadium for many.
Yeah, I remember you had
the Aussie Stadium. We did a lot of brave things, and a lot of that was led by John. He would go all in. And the Aussie business, look, for the Aussie business for, the majority of its 30 years was a family-driven business. And it was very close to our heart. We could zig and zag on a dime. It would take me 20 minutes sitting down with John, and we walk out and we're done. No board for approval, no archaic system to get through. And that's exactly what we did. We zigged, we zagged, and built ultimately this magnificent business that's still absolutely pounding away today.
Which is interesting, because if you look at your competitor landscape, you were up against these big monsters who while they had the benefit of size, they didn't have the benefit of speed. And so incisive decision making, obviously, is a huge advantage. You've then got to have the guts to make the decisions and implement. But what I think is so interesting is you mentioned just before is this ability to learn. Another great Australian sort of shared with me, he's in retail, that in retail, you put a product out and it's not a matter of ideology or opinion. If it doesn't sell, you have to admit to yourself immediately that it hasn't sold and move to the next thing. And so that ability to learn from mistakes and adjust course and have the humility to do that, to me is, absolutely foundational.
Brett, we failed plenty of times, but we failed fast and we moved on. Yeah. And we didn't fail again. No one was fired for it. No one was this. And, normally it was me who failed, but we failed fast. We learnt real quick. We didn't let it go on and we moved on. It's like the old adage of hire slow and fire fast, right? We failed plenty of times, and people cannot, don't be worried about failing as long as you're not betting the business and putting the business on the line. Fortunately, our wins and our learnings from the failings were greater than the failings themselves. And that turned our team, that turned us into, pretty smart cats because of the learning process.
Yeah, because of the ability to get that feedback loop moving quickly, make a decision, get the feedback and adjust course. Now, you look at the personal sort of journey. When was Aussie the first, when did you sell a business to Commonwealth Bank?
Look, it's interesting.
And how many years was that earn out, and how did that work?
Yeah, in the late 2000s, just after the GFC, Ralph Norris, CBA, came to John and said, listen, we're very interested in the sector. And, you guys are the brand, the business to deal with. And we would like to position an equity buy-in at the time. John was, you would blow him away. I mean, him selling the business to CBA, which in years gone by have certainly been, a bit of an arch enemy, certainly not today, but a bit of an arch enemy. And John we ended up doing a deal with CBA, and it was a slow buying. It was a long burn over many years. They had to get used to and understand the business. That ended up being 100% bought by CBA. I stayed on. John stayed on, but I stayed on a little bit longer to make sure the business was settled, to make sure everything was fine. CBA obviously had, after the Royal Commission, had a bit of a change of heart in terms of the ownership of a mortgage broker, and felt that they couldn't own the majority of a mortgage broker, regardless who they are, especially Aussie, and decided 18 months ago, 2 years ago, to go out and to offload the majority share in the business. Unfortunately, John and I, we don't, we would have loved to have purchased it back, and that didn't happen, and that's life. The business was bought by a company called Lendy, a technology business, good young guys. They own the majority of the business. CBA own the slight minority of the business. However, the business itself is in good hands. It's a strong business, and it's doing very, very well. Just Hannah Tick, say hello. All right. This is my 2.5-year-old daughter. This is Stella. For anyone out there watching or listening, this is what it's all about. The last 12 odd months in gardening leave, dealing with my daughter, it's been an absolute miracle. Now, can you go back out to Mama, please?
So on that, you go on gardening leave, and you've got your gorgeous girl, both of them. And you've had this illness.
Yeah.
What do you learn? You're top of the game. You get told you're not well. What are the learnings for people out there around life?
Brett, I've been hit, and my wife's been hit by them, curveballs like you wouldn't believe. I mean, literally 5 years ago, and I put this in context, please, without me gloating. I'm sitting on the back of a big mega yacht in Monaco, literally about to drive through Italy to order, literally the latest sports car and all the rest of it. And I remember saying to my wife, how good's life, right? Just got engaged. Things are great. Sold the business, got a bit of cash in bank. Everything's okay. 3 months later, diagnosed with terminal cancer, multiple myeloma, and the doctor initially said, "You've got 4 to 6 weeks to live." I mean, how do you mentally cope with that?
And how old were you at that point?
Mate, this was 4.5 years ago. I'm 50 years of age, just turned. And then I was
45.
told, 46 years of age. I think I was 45. And you got 4 to 6 weeks to live. I mean, it just mind-boggling. You've been on this amazing journey in life. And I've been very fortunate, whether it's a prime minister or Prince Charles or whatever, to liaise with them all. Next thing you know, I'm sitting in a doctor's room saying that, listen, life as you know, it's going to change. So we've been dealing with that now 4.5 years. I threw everything at it, whether it was doctors from Harvard, whether it's, doctors in Sydney, whether it's medications, whether it's rare medications. I'm here today and I'm stronger than ever. I'm like a bull. And so doctors sit back and go, what the hell? My mental attitude it was and still is. And look, I saw you the other day and you had said to me, geez, James. And, I've got a very strong mental attitude. I didn't, of course you have your dark times, but, I'm here for a long time. Mental is half the battle. And, it's very important to me. And today,
to then just focus on the family, things that are interesting to you. What would you say to other people out there, in terms of running businesses and the impact that has on their time and health? They're not related, in my view.
My wife would have a different opinion than I had, and same with my parents. Brett, we knew no way to be successful other than to work harder than anyone else worked. We got up earlier, we finished later, we worked on weekends. I remember my 25th birthday, I'm sitting there with mum and dad at 9 o'clock at night waiting for John to come out of a customer's home because he was doing a loan appointment, right? And then for us to go to dinner. We worked hard, real hard, no mucking around. I knew no other. We knew no other. I look back and I go, I didn't actually, have much fun in my 20s, but I worked bloody hard. But that was fun to me. And people who are giving it half-hearted and people who aren't putting in absolutely everything they've got, well, that's what they'll get out of it. I saw plenty of my competitors who was great. They drank plenty, ate plenty, had their weekends. Good luck to them. I didn't. We built the biggest, retail mortgage broker outfit in the country, a household brand that was as good as anyone's, but trusted, respected. And we were from Tasmania to Darwin. I mean, we were I lived in Perth, I lived in Queensland, I lived in Melbourne, opening up and straightening up offices there. Well, we got our hands dirty. We're old-fashioned bricks and mortar, got our hands dirty business. We weren't, I admire these tech businesses where after 5 years of hard work, they make $1 billion. I read an article about 3 months ago where, one of the tech billionaires said, yeah, but it took us 7 years to make $2 billion. It was hard. And I'm going, dear me. I mean, it's totally different for us.
Yeah. No, totally. So, and look, you can only play the hand you're dealt. I've seen healthy people ill. I've seen unhealthy people ill, and at the end of the day, you want to know you've spent your time well doing.
Yeah, we lived and breathed the business, Brett. We lived and breathed the business, but we love the business, really. And it's all about the people. And Brett, I watch you, and you doing exactly the same. You and I have known each other for a very long time, and since you had a full head of hair and I was probably 20 kilos lighter, with a fresh face and I could see without glasses, which means that I've known Brett literally since school days. Yeah. Everyone who's watching won't go into it. And Brett himself, is a shining star that we should be interviewing you. And you
we work away because we like it. Like if you didn't like it, you wouldn't do the work.
No.
But I've never experienced it as work. I like it.
That's it. I love it. Absolutely love it. Mate, for 30 years I wore an Aussie lapel on my jacket. Whether I was going to an Aussie function or an industry function or not, I loved the people. And that was what it was all about. And the people created the brand. The people create the technology. The people create.
It's a great observation. You know, I was with somebody yesterday and I just said, look, I like people. I just really like people.
Yeah.
And if we can help them, then that help. And I absolutely love doing what we do. If you love the business you're in, it is uncommon. So I've dealt with that by hanging out with people like you that love what they're doing, and then you're just doing it all the time. So that helps a lot.
Yeah.
But typically in Australia, it is a bit odd if you work a lot at something you love. How did you guys play that?
We were probably very insulated. I grew up in a family, hard workers. We talked about business around the dinner table. We still do. And my wife actually never grew up in that sort of environment. So she's still very much, well, you talk about business all the time, right? My father, my mother, my sister, my brother, my grandparents, we didn't differentiate between business and pleasure. What we did was a way of life. Simple as that. And that's what probably helps us through. You know, we very much talk about business like it was talking about going to the park or
going to the footy,
or school, going to the footy. And I bet you do too.
I like it. It's funny. I just love business. So I hang out with people that love business. We talk about it all the time.
That's it. And therefore, and I'm a big believer, you are who you hang around with.
Yeah.
You know, the environment you're raised in is really important, gives you the values, but you are who you hang around with. Your mates, your business associates. You know, I remember my great uncle many years ago who had done very well for himself. I was like 18, 17 years of age, and he was talking to me about success. And he just said to me, James, you love playing tennis, don't you? And I said, absolutely. He said, when you choose someone to play tennis with, do you choose someone to play tennis with who's as good as, if not better than you? Or do you choose someone to play tennis with that's less than you, that's not as good as you, where you don't get a good game? And I said, of course you want a good game. You want to choose someone who's as good as, if not better than you. He said the same in life, the same in business.
Yeah, great
analogy. Said, you know what? He said, choose people who are as good as, if not better than you, to help lift you up in your attitude, in your success, in your work ethic. And I've done that all my life.
Yeah, it's a great observation.
It's been really, and friends and business associates who are happy for your success. Brett, it's amazing how many people who are not necessarily happy for your success, including friends. You know, be careful. Yeah. Some of the friends you tell good news to, because they're not necessarily happy for you.
Yeah.
You know? And so
you look at spot on. Like, hang around people that are positive, that are doing
happy for you,
and that want the best for you.
Oh, it makes such a difference.
Makes a big difference. Makes such a big difference.
You know, and especially if you're a small business owner, and every day, especially for the first few years, is a grind. And you've got to pick yourself up, and you've got to, launch yourself again. You've got to remember why you do what you do. You've got to learn from yourself and your peers. It makes life a lot easier by surrounding yourself with people who are as good, if not better than you, or people who are cheering you on.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best, for our listeners, I think it's one of the best things that someone shared with me in years. I played tennis with a client about a year ago, and he plays twice a week. He's very, very, very good player. And I think we had a set and he beat me 6-3. And one of my partners was there. I think he got hammered 6-love. And that was funny. And, my mate said to me later, he said, he's a great player. I said, yeah, I'd much rather play up, test yourself up against the best, read about the best, hang around the best people you can get near. And learn from those people, because their standards will push you to be better, not to be as good as them or not to compete with them, but to be the best that you can possibly be, because people's standards ultimately determine, what they're going to achieve. Self-satisfaction of doing a good job that you're after.
And running a small business as well can be very lonely. It's Absolutely. A lonely journey, especially if it's your vision, and you've got staff and all the rest. It's still your vision. and your husband or your wife is sitting there going, what's happening? You're working like a dog, but we're not making much money. And you're sitting there going, well, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And there's so much pressure and there's mortgages and there's all the rest of it. And to find groups of people or individuals that can help you with your positivity, that can help you, remind you.
Or James, or just not shit on you.
Or just not shit on
you.
you.
What I found was that if I could just find people that didn't shit on you, that didn't say, why are you working all the time? The analogy I use is if you want to build a 40-story building, you've got to go down about 20 stories. Now, when you're digging down that hole, there's a lot of dirt, a lot of muck, a lot of shit. It stinks. You're putting in the steel, you're laying the concrete, and you're so far down under that hole, no one sees you. No one gives you a high five. They don't pat you on the back. It's invisible work. But after you start building up those floors one at a time, and it takes years, all of a sudden you break ground, right? You lay the first level above ground and people notice. You do the next one, the next one, the next one. And you're up 10 levels and people go, geez, I'd like a 10-level building. And it's like, no, you wouldn't, mate.
Oh, you're an overnight success.
Because it takes 10 years to build the fucking foundation and it's miserable.
Mate.
And it is hard. And so, for people listening, many of them know this journey. The reality is, if you can just, particularly in Australia, find people who won't shit on you. I was lucky because I had some good friends like yourself who I knew were positive, and just a word of positivity that you can give to other people can really help them go through, the muscle building, the pain of the muscle building required. It just makes a massive difference. So I've always been so grateful to YouTube in particular, that's filled with inspirational people who, even if I can't meet them face to face, would be my, I call them my virtual mentors that teach me things and give me encouragement. But that's the journey. And so, today to have some time with you and for our listeners to hear that journey, there are very few people that start a business. John had lost, everything he had financially, broken marriage, had this idea, crazy idea. I remember he shared, I think he got it from the US, that he'd do this thing. Nobody knew what he was doing. Got himself a tiny little office, smashed away. And then James was lucky enough to, at 19, be there at the start, but worked their guts out, built an iconic brand, created thousands of jobs, made a difference to millions of people. I think it's an unbelievable story, mate. I really appreciate your time.
Brett, one of our proudest moments is that when we had the federal treasurer, I think it was literally 20 years ago, stand up in Parliament, and I'm not sure whether it was under John Howard government or just before, and basically stood up in Parliament and said, if it wasn't for John Symond, if it wasn't for Aussie Home Loans, every Australian would be paying at least 1% to 1.5% more on their mortgage. So to have built a business, started a business, ran a business, ultimately sold a business that's made that sort of impact on the community is something that we will never lose, something that we're so proud of. We are thankful for the people and the journey that we had. We've had, like a dragon, we've had a bit of a break and taken a big breath, and, we're absolutely looking at the landscape at the moment as to what it needs. And I think you'll find that we may just give it a little tickle and give it a little go moving forward. We've got plenty of energy left and hopefully a little bit of smarts. We won't start with just secondhand stationery this time. We'll start with hopefully a little bit more backing than that. But, literally the first 30 years, in particular for me, were just the beginning.
Been a good start. Mate, right. I appreciate your time today. Now, as you cook up your next plan, I'd love you to come and share it with us when it's the right time.
Brett, it's always great to speak to you, and I think that the roles should be reversed and the interviewer should be interviewing you.
I'm planning to stay an interviewing learner, and
the magnificent business and the magnificent business and clientele that certainly you guys have, which we're all very proud to see.
Awesome, mate. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Good.
Thanks, Agent.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Be Better Off Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Have a great day.